The Council's warship descended silently through the folds of space, its massive hull cloaked by the darkness of the distant nebula. Inside, the high-ranking members of the Galactic Council sat in tense silence. They had made a decision, one that would set the course of history. An unassuming human couple, living far from the bustling centers of galactic power, had caught their attention. The problem? The couple was hiding something. Something dangerous. Something that the Council could no longer afford to ignore. The voice of Counselor Teldis, an ancient being whose species had survived for millennia, broke the silence. His reptilian eyes glinted with impatience as he addressed the gathering. You all understand what's at stake here. The human race is unpredictable, wild. But this couple, they know something we don't. We cannot allow such a threat to fester. Across the room, Counselor Ryla, an elegant being of light and energy, disagreed. But they are nothing more than a simple couple living on a quiet planet. There are no reports of unrest, no signals of rebellion. Why waste resources on them? Because, Teldisist, there are rumors, old ones, about a human lineage tied to an artifact of unimaginable power. Power we cannot afford to let fall into the wrong hands. Ryla's glow flickered for a moment. An artifact? Here? On a backwater planet? Yes, Teldis said, his voice cold. And it's time we investigate. Bring them to us. We'll deal with them appropriately. The command was given, and the fleet moved to action. Without hesitation, the warship began its descent toward the small, isolated world known as Nevis 12. Meanwhile, on the surface of Nevis 12, the human couple, Marcus and Alara, sat quietly on their porch, enjoying the stillness of the twilight sky. They had built a life far from the chaos of the galaxy, far from the political intrigues and dangers of spacefaring civilizations. Their cottage, nestled in the hills of this tranquil planet, was their sanctuary, untouched by the strife of the universe. Alara leaned her head against Marcus's shoulder, a peaceful smile playing on her lips. I can't remember the last time it felt this perfect, she said softly. No fighting, no threats, just us here together. Marcus wrapped his arm around her, gazing out at the sprawling landscape. I know, it's hard to believe this is real sometimes, but we've earned this peace. Unbeknownst to them, their quiet life was about to come crashing down. As the last remnants of sunlight faded into the horizon, a strange hum filled the air, and a shadow stretched across the hills. Their peace was shattered in an instant as a massive ship appeared in the sky above them, its engines roaring with a terrifying intensity. Marcus jumped to his feet, his instincts immediately on edge. What the hell is that? Alara's eyes widened in fear. I don't know, but it doesn't look like anything from around here. The ship hovered for a moment, then descended rapidly, its landing gear kicking up dust and debris as it touched down. The ground trembled beneath them, and before they could react, a group of armored figures appeared from the ship. They were tall, their alien features cold and unreadable, their eyes fixed on Marcus and Alara with a chilling intensity. Are you the ones? One of the figures demanded, his voice harsh and metallic. Marcus's heart raced. He looked to Alara, but she was already reaching for the small, hidden weapon they kept close at hand, just in case. Her hand gripped the cold metal with a steady determination. We don't want any trouble, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. Who are you? What do you want? The armored figure stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. The Galactic Council has sent us. You are to come with us. Now, Alara's grip tightened on the weapon. There was something wrong, something far beyond the scope of what they had prepared for. They had lived a life of peace, but the galaxy had a long memory, and its eyes had turned to them. What do you mean? Marcus demanded. We've done nothing to you. Leave us alone. The alien didn't respond with words. Instead, he stepped forward, his hand raised. Before Marcus could react, he felt a sharp, jarring pain, as though his very bones were being torn apart. His vision blurred, and he collapsed to the ground, unable to fight back. Alara screamed his name, but the alien's hand remained outstretched, casting an invisible force over them both. The last thing Marcus saw before the world went dark was Alara's terrified face, and then nothing at all. The Galactic Council had come for them, and soon they would learn the terrible truth of what they had unleashed. The moment Marcus regained consciousness, his body was already in motion. He had no idea where he was, no idea what had happened to him. His hands were bound tightly, and the harsh metallic scent of the alien ship filled his nostrils. Above him, the low hum of energy fields pulsed, unsettling and relentless. He blinked rapidly, trying to clear his vision. Marcus. Alara's voice was sharp, filled with panic. She was nearby, and despite the terror in her tone, there was a sense of urgency in her words. Wake up. He tried to move, but the restraints were too tight. His heart pounded in his chest as his mind rushed to catch up with the situation. The last thing he remembered was the shadow descending from the sky, the cold, menacing soldiers who had attacked them without warning. Alara, are you okay? He croaked, his throat dry from the aftershock. I'm fine, she said, voice trembling, though she didn't sound entirely sure of that. They've taken us. We need to figure out how to get out of here. Before he could respond, a door slid open with a harsh mechanical hiss. Two of the armored figures entered, their faces obscured by reflective visors, their movements swift and precise. One of them spoke, his voice metallic and emotionless. You are to come with us. The council has been informed of your actions. Marcus gritted his teeth. We haven't done anything. Who are you? The soldier ignored his question, stepping forward and unbuckling the restraints on his wrists. As soon as the binds loosened, Marcus instinctively lunged, using his momentum to try and grab the soldier's arm. The movement was swift, desperate, and yet, before he could make contact, a force field slammed into his chest, sending him crashing backward. Alara let out a startled cry as the soldier advanced, pulling her to her feet in the same brutal manner. Do not resist, the soldier said, his voice colder than ever. They were dragged through a series of narrow, gleaming corridors, their feet stumbling on the slick metal floors. The walls were lined with unfamiliar technology that hummed with energy, casting an eerie glow. Each step they took only deepened the sense of dread gnawing at Marcus's mind. Where were they? What was happening? Suddenly, the corridor opened into a vast chamber, command center of some kind. A long, oval-shaped table dominated the center, surrounded by imposing figures seated in high-back chairs. Above them, a massive viewport showed the endless expanse of space, distant stars, and nebulae dotting the void. At the head of the table sat Teldis. The counselor Marcus had heard rumors about the one who had ordered their capture. The reptilian alien's cold gaze met theirs as they were forced to kneel before him. There was no emotion in his eyes, only the calculating coldness of a predator. You are human, Teldis began, his voice deep and resonant, and yet you have something no human should possess. Alara's voice wavered with a mix of fear and defiance. What do you mean? We don't have anything. We're just trying to live. Teldis narrowed his eyes, studying them with a mix of contempt and curiosity. The artifact, he said, his words slow and deliberate. The one you protect. The one your ancestors hid. You are the last of the line. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? He demanded, struggling to control the rising panic in his chest. We're just normal people. We don't have anything. The counselors sitting at the table exchanged glances, some skeptical, others impatient. Do you deny the truth? Teldis continued, his voice growing more forceful. The council knows what you protect, and we will have it, whether you like it or not. Marcus felt a chill settle in his bones as a deep realization hit him. The artifact. The thing they had always kept hidden. Their families had guarded it for generations, but neither he nor Alara had ever fully understood its significance. They'd been told only that it was too dangerous to let fall into the hands of any government, too dangerous to even speak of. But now here they were, in the heart of the Galactic Council's domain, and the truth was out. Alara, Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible, they know. They know everything. She didn't answer, her expression one of shock, her eyes wide as she processed the enormity of their situation. The artifact had never been more than a whispered legend to her. A hidden legacy they were sworn to protect, not to wield. But now, it was the reason for their capture, and the council wouldn't let them go without it. Telda stood, towering over them. "There's no point in lying," he said coldly. "The artifact will belong to the Galactic Council. We will use its power to secure our dominion. You will assist us, or you will be eliminated." Before Marcus could respond, Ilara's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "You don't understand. You think you're the only ones who know power, but you're wrong. You won't control it. The artifact isn't meant for you. It's meant for someone who can handle it." She took a step forward, defiant in the face of overwhelming odds. "If you want it, you'll have to kill us first." Teldas's expression hardened, and a flicker of something, perhaps respect, perhaps frustration, crossed his face. But he was not swayed. "Then we shall see who is worthy," he said, signaling to his soldiers. "Take them to the holding cells. Prepare for the next phase." As they were dragged away, the cold realization sank in. This was just the beginning. The council wouldn't rest until they had the artifact, and Marcus and Ilara would have to fight to the death to stop them. Marcus's mind raced, but there was no time to think. He and Ilara had been thrown into a cold, sterile cell aboard the Galactic Council's warship. The harsh lights above flickered in rhythm with his heartbeat, casting long shadows against the metal walls. His wrists were still raw from the restraints, his body aching from the brutal handling. But the pain didn't matter. What mattered was the truth they were now forced to face. The council had found them. Found it. The artifact, buried deep within their family's past. A legacy that neither he nor Ilara had fully understood until now. Ilara paced back and forth in their small cell, her movements sharp with frustration. "How could they know?" she muttered, almost to herself. "We kept it hidden, Marcus. We've always kept it hidden." "I don't know," Marcus replied, his voice strained. He couldn't keep the panic from creeping into his words. "But they do know, Ilara. And if they get their hands on it, everything changes." The room felt suffocating, the silence between them a constant reminder of the danger they were in. The council had made it clear they would stop at nothing to possess the artifact. But what was it? What kind of power could possibly justify such an overwhelming pursuit? Marcus could feel the weight of the question pressing down on him, suffocating him. Ilara stopped pacing and turned to face him, her eyes dark with worry. "What if we can't stop them? What if we're too late?" "We won't be late," Marcus said, his voice more determined than he felt. "We have to stop them. We don't even understand what they're after yet, but whatever it is, we can't let them have it." There was a long pause before Ilara spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I know what it is." Marcus's breath caught in his throat. "What do you mean?" Ilara stepped closer, her gaze intense. "I've been thinking. Ever since they mentioned the artifact, I've been remembering something my grandmother used to say. She always warned me that there was something in our family's past, something powerful. But she never told me what it was. She just said it was too dangerous for anyone to know." Marcus's mind spun. "Your grandmother, she knew. I think she knew more than she let on. I found a journal after she died. A few notes, scraps of old stories she never shared with anyone else. It talked about an artifact hidden away for centuries, something that could bend the will of entire civilizations. She said it could either save or destroy everything." The implications of her words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He had always thought the artifact was just a legend, a relic of old stories passed down through generations. But now it was clear, what they guarded was much more than a simple artifact. It was the key to something vast. He took a step forward, urgency creeping into his voice. "What else? Ilara, what else did she say?" Her eyes filled with uncertainty as she hesitated. "That it was a key to something worse than anything we've ever faced. That it was meant to remain hidden because it had the potential to unleash a force that no one, not even the council, could control." The silence between them grew thicker, and Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The truth was unraveling before him, but it was more terrifying than he could have imagined. "How is that possible?" he whispered. "I don't know," she answered, her voice barely audible. "But I do know one thing. If they get their hands on it, the galaxy won't be the same. The Council won't be the same. And neither will we." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything. "So it's true. We've been guarding a key to something beyond the Council's control. But they think they can control it. They think they can use it to conquer the galaxy." Ilara nodded slowly. "And they'll destroy anyone who stands in their way." His stomach tightened with dread as the weight of their situation fully settled in. They weren't just prisoners now. They were the last line of defense against an unimaginable threat. The artifact, whatever it was, had to be kept out of the Council's hands at all costs. The door to the cell slid open suddenly, a harsh mechanical sound cutting through the air. Marcus's heart jumped into his throat as a figure appeared in the doorway. One of the soldiers, his expression unreadable behind his visor. "Time's up," the soldier said simply. "The Council wants to see you. Now." Marcus and Ilara exchanged a glance, a mix of fear and determination in their eyes. Whatever lay ahead, they had no choice but to face it. And as they were escorted down the narrow corridor once more, the chilling realization settled in. They were not just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for the very future of the galaxy itself. The artifact was more than just a legacy. It was a weapon, one that could either save them all or doom them forever. The chamber was silent except for the steady hum of energy shields surrounding the Galactic Council's warship. Marcus and Ilara stood before the full assembly, now flanked by armed soldiers, their hands still bound. Teldis, the reptilian counselor who had ordered their capture, glared down at them from the head of the table. His cold, calculating eyes gleamed with contempt. "You are aware, of course, that your actions have not only put your lives at risk, but jeopardized the entire balance of the galaxy," Teldis said, his voice low and menacing. "The artifact you hide is not merely a relic. It is a weapon, one that we cannot allow to remain outside of our control." Marcus's heart raced as Teldis's words settled in. The artifact, the thing that had been hidden for generations, was a weapon, something more terrifying than they could have imagined. The Council had known. They had always known. Ilara spoke before Marcus could find his voice. "You don't understand. The artifact isn't just for power. It's not meant to be wielded by anyone. If you think you can control it, you're mistaken." Teldis raised a hand, silencing her. "Enough. You speak of the artifact as though it's beyond our reach, beyond our understanding. You are naive human." Marcus clenched his fists. "You're the ones who don't understand. If you use it, you'll destroy everything. The galaxy will burn." The counselor's gaze turned steely, his tone cold as ice. "Perhaps. But we are willing to take that risk. For control. For dominance. For the future of the galaxy." The word stung, but Marcus knew they were only the beginning. The Council wasn't just interested in the artifact. They had an agenda. They wanted to reshape the galaxy to their will, and the artifact was their key to doing so. Teldis leaned forward, his voice laced with authority. "We've sent scouts to other systems. Our fleets are already moving into position. We will subjugate any species that dares oppose us. The artifact will ensure that no force in the galaxy can challenge the power of the Galactic Council." Ilara's eyes flashed with a mix of fear and defiance. "You'll never succeed. The artifact was meant to stay hidden, to prevent exactly this. You think you can just take it and wield its power without consequence." Teldis's smile was cold, devoid of humor. "You speak as if you understand its nature, but you do not. We will make sure of that." He waved a hand, signaling for the guards to remove them. "Take them to the extraction room. Let's see what they know." As Marcus and Ilara were dragged from the chamber, the weight of their situation became unbearable. The full extent of the Council's power was now clear. They didn't care about right or wrong, only control. And if they got their hands on the artifact, there would be no stopping them. They were led down a series of metallic hallways, the sounds of boots echoing against the cold walls. The further they went, the more Marcus felt the presence of the Council closing in on them. Every step felt like a countdown. The artifact was the key, and if they couldn't stop the council, it would be used to impose their will on the galaxy. Ilara whispered to him, her voice tight with fear. We have to figure out a way to destroy it. If they think they can control it, they'll unleash something none of us can handle. Marcus nodded, his mind racing. The council was moving fast, and they had no time to waste. The fate of the galaxy was hanging by a thread, and it rested in their hands. The artifact couldn't fall into the wrong hands. As they reached the extraction room, a heavy door slid open, revealing a small, sterile chamber. It looked like a place of interrogation, a place where they would be forced to reveal everything. The soldiers shoved them inside, locking the door behind them with a finality that made Marcus's stomach churn. They were alone now, but for how long? The council had already begun their plans to conquer the galaxy. Marcus and Ilara had to find a way out. Fast star. Do you think we can destroy it? Ilara asked, her voice breaking through his thoughts. I don't know, Marcus replied, trying to steady his breathing. But we have to try. If the council gets hold of it, it's over for all of us. They stood in the sterile room, the seconds ticking by like hours. The artifact was out there, and they had no idea how much time they had left before the council unleashed its terrible power. But one thing was certain. If they didn't act fast, the galaxy would be lost to the grip of the Galactic Council forever. It was time to make a choice, fight, or die trying. The walls of the interrogation room closed in on Marcus like a vice. His hands were still shackled, his muscles tense, and his thoughts were spinning out of control. The artifact, the one thing they had sworn to protect, was now the key to a galactic war. The council wasn't just after power. They were after everything. The door to the room slid open with a hiss, and a cold, metallic voice echoed through the space. The council has spoken. You will tell us what we need to know, or you will be destroyed. Marcus's heart pounded as he stood, facing the towering figure of the soldier. I've told you everything, he growled. We don't know what it is. We don't understand it, but we know it's dangerous. And we're not going to let you have it. The soldier's eyes glinted beneath his helmet. Lies. The word hissed through the air, sharp and unforgiving. You will cooperate. The artifact is not just a relic. It is a weapon of unimaginable power. And you will give us the knowledge we seek. Ilara, Marcus whispered, glancing at her as she sat beside him, her expression hard with defiance. Don't. The door slammed open again, and Teldis stepped inside, his eyes filled with cold authority. The room seemed to darken as he entered. You think you know power, humans. You think you know what this artifact is capable of. You know nothing. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Teldis's voice had a finality to it, a certainty that rang with the weight of someone who had long since made up his mind. I will have the artifact, Teldis said, and you will tell me how to use it. His eyes flickered toward the guards. Take them to the chamber. They're not leaving here alive unless they do as they're told. Ilara shot Marcus a quick look, her jaw set with determination. As the guards moved to drag them away, she reached out and squeezed his hand, her fingers tight around his. The cold metal floor beneath their feet clanged with every step they took, a constant reminder of how far they were from home, from safety. The interrogation had only been the beginning. They were taken deeper into the ship, past endless corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. The ship was a labyrinth of gleaming, soulless metal, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking to their doom. When they finally reached the chamber, the door slid open to reveal a massive, darkened room. At the center was a pedestal, its surface glowing faintly, pulsating with an otherworldly light. Marcus's pulse quickened. This was it. The artifact was here. Ilara, do you see that? Marcus whispered, his voice strained. She nodded, but her eyes weren't on the pedestal. She was looking at the walls, etched with ancient symbols, as though they had been carved long before any of the Council's ships had ever entered the galaxy. It was clear to her, as it was to Marcus, that the artifact wasn't just a weapon. It was a key to something far older than the Council itself. Do you understand now? Teldis's voice cut through their thoughts, and Marcus turned to face him. This artifact was designed to shape the very fabric of the galaxy. It is the key to unlocking the ancient forces that created the universe. I will wield its power, and no one will stop me. Marcus's stomach twisted. The artifact was never meant to be controlled. It had a purpose, one that was beyond the understanding of even the oldest species in the galaxy. And now, the Council wanted to wield it for their own agenda. But the truth was worse than he could have imagined. Teldus, with all his authority, had underestimated the artifact's true power. He didn't just want to control it. He wanted to reshape the galaxy to his will. What if we don't tell you? Alara's voice was steady, unwavering, as she faced Teldus. What if we destroy it instead? Teldus's lips curled into a cruel smile. You can try. But you won't. You're trapped, human. You're in my domain now. The room seemed to close in around them, the walls pressing in with an almost physical weight. It was clear that the Council's plans were far more insidious than they had realized. They were no longer just facing a group of power-hungry aliens. They were standing against something far darker, an ancient power that could destroy everything. Alara's eyes met Marcus's, and for a moment, they shared an unspoken understanding. There was only one option left. They had to destroy the artifact. But doing so would come at a cost. The Council would never stop hunting them. As the guards closed in, Teldus stepped forward, his hand reaching for the pedestal. Time is up, he said with a sneer. You will serve me, or you will be eradicated. And in that moment, Marcus knew the truth. There was no escape now. They had to act. If they didn't, the galaxy would fall under the Council's iron grip. And it would be too late to stop it. The room shook. Metal groaned under the pressure of the ship's engines, as if the entire warship was a living thing, straining against its own weight. Marcus could feel the tension in his muscles, the heat of fear rising in his chest. It was now or never. They had one chance, *1*, to stop the Council, to prevent the galaxy from descending into chaos. Teldus stood over the artifact, his eyes gleaming with hunger. This is the power I will wield, he whispered, his voice reverberating with dark satisfaction. No one will challenge the Council again. The galaxy will kneel before me. Marcus's heart pounded. He glanced at Alara, who was standing at his side, her expression resolute. There was no turning back now. They had to act, or everything they had fought for would be lost. The artifact couldn't fall into the hands of someone like Teldus. It had to be destroyed. Do you really think you can control it? Marcus spat, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. You don't know what you're dealing with. Teldus sneered. I don't need to control it. I just need to use it. The room's lights flickered, and the pedestal began to hum. The air vibrated with an eerie energy, and Marcus felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The artifact was reacting to Teldus's touch, feeding off his power. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a force of nature. Alara's eyes locked with Marcus's. We don't have much time, she whispered. We need to disable the power source, now starred. Marcus nodded, his hand instinctively reaching for the hidden weapon strapped to his side. The guards had left them alone for the moment, underestimating the danger the two of them posed when they were cornered. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Teldus's back was turned, and Marcus seized the opportunity. He surged forward, moving faster than he thought possible. With a quick motion, he drew the weapon and fired a blast of energy at the pedestal. The blast struck the base, sending a shockwave through the room that made the walls rattle. Teldus whirled around, fury flashing in his eyes. You fool. You think you can. Before he could finish, Alara sprinted toward the pedestal, her movements swift and precise. She slammed her hand onto the console beside it, and a series of loud, mechanical clicks echoed in the room. The hum of the artifact faltered, then stopped entirely. For a split second, the room was silent. The power source had been severed. The artifact lay still, inert. Teldus roared, his voice laced with rage. What have you done? Marcus didn't waste a second. He grabbed Alara's arm and pulled her toward the door. They had no more time to waste. The room was shaking again, this time with violent force. The ship was beginning to break apart, the artifact's destabilization triggering a cascade of failures in the ship's systems. "Move," Marcus shouted, pushing Alara ahead of him as they sprinted down the hallways, the sound of alarms blaring in their ears. They were running out of time. Behind them, Teldus and his soldiers were closing in. "You can't escape," Teldus yelled, his voice filled with venom. "The artifact will be mine." The walls trembled, and the very air felt like it was warping, as if reality itself was starting to bend under the artifact's dying energy. Marcus glanced back for a brief moment, his chest tight with dread. The ship was coming apart. The Council's plans were crumbling around them, and yet they still had to escape, had to survive. They turned a corner and came face to face with more guards. Marcus didn't hesitate. He fired a shot, taking down the first guard, and Alara followed, disarming another in seconds. The chaos was everywhere, but they kept moving, pushing through the wreckage of the ship like they had nothing left to lose. "Alara, get to the escape pods," Marcus shouted. "I'll hold them off." "No, Marcus," Alara protested, grabbing his arm. "We do this together." He shook his head. "We're running out of time. Get to the pod, and don't look back." For a moment, she hesitated. Then, with a look of determination, she nodded. "I'll see you there." As Alara ran ahead, Marcus turned to face the approaching soldiers. His heart was racing, but he was calm. This was it, the final stand. He wasn't going to let the Council win. Not today. The soldiers charged, their weapons raised. Marcus fired, each shot finding its mark. His vision blurred, but he didn't stop. Not until he saw Alara reach the escape pod, and not until he knew she was safe. The ship was coming apart. The last of the Council's power was slipping through their fingers. The artifact was gone. The galaxy had a chance, thanks to them. With one final, desperate push, Marcus ran toward the pod, diving into it just as the ship's hull shattered, and the void of space consumed everything. The battle wasn't over. But for now, they had won.